I am a first-generation Vietnamese American. Growing up in San Jose, California, I never felt fears of race or ethnicity. San Jose is home to one of the largest populations of Vietnamese people in the US, and this allowed me to avoid many of the racial prejudices that could have affected me had I lived in another town or era. The Vietnamese population is incredibly prevalent in our community. It's not hard to find stores or restaurants catered to Vietnamese people. In my school, there are many more Trans and Nguyen's than Smiths. There are so many Nguyen's that we took up almost an entire page in all of our yearbooks. Never was there a time in school where I felt uncomfortable because of my status as a minority, because we weren't really minorities at all. Class inequality has also been relatively a non-issue for me as well. Growing up in a middle-class household, I was fortunate enough to grow up not worrying about food or shelter daily. I lived a stable life because of the hard work of both my parents. They are able to provide me with anything I needed, and they deterred me from feeling uncomfortable in our society. My parents, however, were not as lucky as I was. Both of my parents were born in Vietnam and grew up during the tumultuous times of the Vietnam War. Before the war, they were both part of middle or upper middle class families and lived a normal life. Then the North Communists invaded, inciting a turning point for their entire lives. My parents both grew up in South Vietnam, the free side, so they were heavily against the communist thinking. But now that the communists invaded, they were forced to leave to flee the country in order to be free. My grandfather was a colonel for the South Vietnamese military, so he was able to escape Vietnam with my dad in helicopters days before South Vietnam fell. My grandfather on my mom's side was also part of the military, but he was put into what the communists called concentration camps, which was more like a prison for 3 years. He lost all of his money, and once he was freed from camp, he worked to save enough gold to buy spaces in fishing boats to escape. These people that used boats to escape Vietnam are known as the boat people. Many of these people failed to make the trips to asylums either by starvation, disease, or getting captured and killed by pirates. My mother luckily was able to avoid the dangers of the sea. They both arrived in the US with nothing and were forced to start over. Because of this, they had to deal with the struggles many immigrants are forced to deal with, such as being considerably poorer than those around you and facing judgment for being a different ethnicity. My father migrated to a small town in Iowa at age 12, and my mom to San Jose at age 15. From there, they went through a great deal of adversity and struggled to adapt to this entirely new culture. First, they had to get past the language barrier, and being relatively uneducated in English, schools were extremely tough. The teachers were accepting of their situation, but only so much could be done. It was extremely hard teaching them English because there weren't any Vietnamese teachers present. So because of this, both parties struggled to communicate. They also struggled because of the entirely different school system and subjects as well. Trying to learn new subjects while not knowing the language is a nearly impossible task. They were social outcasts from those around them because of their looks and the aforementioned language issue. Many people still had some negative thoughts about other races at this time, and my parents being Asian was no exception. They were both targets of bullying by the other white children for being different. Adding to that, they were also poorer than many other kids around them, so they were not able to keep up with the latest trends that every other kid had. Once my parents were able to get past the steep learning curve and adapt, however, they began to flourish in their new home. My grandfather refused to settle for a low-paying minimum wage job, so he decided to start over and go back to school. He was able to earn his GED, attend college, chiropractic school, and then became a licensed chiropractor. He opened up his own practice and then was able to fully provide for his family. My parents eventually broke past the language barrier and found an identity they used to connect with the other children. My father found his niche with sports and was able to converse about it with other children, eventually creating lasting friendships which allowed him to feel included in society. School became easier for him as well, and eventually he was able to get into medical school and become a surgeon. My mother faced similar issues as my dad as well, and even she was able to get past those and become a dentist now. Both of my parents' accomplishments show the importance that immigrants can have on our society. An extremely popular issue today is the topic of deportation and blocking off our borders for immigrants from other countries. This issue is extremely detrimental to our society, and it completely goes against the beliefs of the American dream. Immigrants should be able to come in and change the world, such as Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google. He migrated to the US from the Soviet Union at age 6, and now he is the 13th richest person in the world, with an estimated net worth of $43.2 billion. Blocking off the possibility for such people to make a difference will cause us to take a step backwards in our society. The US was originally founded by immigrants, so it is extremely ironic that we are bringing this topic back up today. People need to be accepting of all different races and cultures for us to truly become a united nation.